I'm just down the hall.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Erin. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, I guess. Daylight savings, it gets so dark now so early. So welcome to our third installment of the webinars for Making STEM Connections. And we are going to today talk about technology in Makerspace. And a couple of reminders. One, I take attendance through looking at the participant list and also the chat room. So pay attention to that. Sometimes when you log on, I can't tell exactly who it is based on, like sometimes it says a school name or it has just a first name and there's, 4 or 5 different Jodies. So just pay attention to the chat room because I may be asking you just for clarification of who you are. So you can let me know. And that's first thing. And second thing, we have a couple of guest speakers today that are going to be talking to us about MergeCube. And we're going to get started with them first. And I believe that Andrew is going to be the person who is talking to us. So Andrew, I can send it over to you. There you go.
Great. Can you see
Awesome.
me and can you hear me and can you see my desktop?
Both.
Awesome. All right. Should I just go ahead and start, or did you want to give it any, did you want to say something first? Should I just jump right into it?
I'll just say that we are super excited to have you talk to us today. I've prepared the teachers and let them know that you're going to be in this presentation, and if they have any questions to put those in the chat room, and I will monitor that so that I can translate any of those questions to you.
Great.
And we're just really excited for you to talk to us about this amazing product.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, and we're really, really excited to be, a part of this whole program. And if I understand correctly, this is a group that some of them are serving the older students that will have the headset and the cube, and some are serving the younger students that just have the cube. Is that correct?
That is correct, Andrew.
Great. All right. Well, I'm going to speak to both of the products, and I'm going to do my best to not make this a commercial, but to make it more of, I do want to describe what these things are that you receive and how to use them, but also give some tips on, how to get great use of them, because there's a lot of different things that you can do. And I'm just going to talk very quickly about why we created these. And I guess the first thing that I'll say is that, one of the things that we've seen is we've been involved in augmented reality and virtual reality for a very long time now, and we'd always believed in the promise of what it could do in education. But we started on the consumer market and then got more refocused on the educational community. And one of the main reasons that it got adapted by educators and brought in the classroom and this become kind of beloved is because, a fundamental issue is that most of us are visual spatial learners. It's what we respond to best, it's what works best for us. And augmented reality, virtual reality, if you have never experienced it, it is deep visual spatial immersion at its core. That's fundamentally what the technological platform does. And just the other thing I'll say is that about the same percentage of today's students are going to be in jobs, they're going to be in fields, they're going to be doing things every day that simply don't exist right now. And we have to prepare them, for, their lives and their careers in the 21st century. And augmented reality, virtual reality is going to be a major force in how they socialize, how they work, and how they're entertained, but it's going to be a fundamental tool that they use in their careers. So we really need to help them get facile with these tools now. I'll skip over this. And I'm just going to kind of quickly show that, Jolie, we so much appreciate being part of this program. And I think a lot of what it had to do with it is that they've been proven as great educational tools, including the cube that I'm going to be showing you, the cube that you already have, won an award for best classroom technology during the big TCA show. And Object Viewer, some of you may also serve as librarians, won an award for best app for teaching and learning. And then the platform that I'm going to be showing won an award for best in show at ISTE. So we're really proud of that. All right, so let's jump into it, what these things are and what you can do with them. The headset is designed for both, it supports both augmented reality and virtual reality. And by the way, I should step back. If you aren't familiar with those, what I mean by those terms is with a virtual reality, the user is being put inside of an artificial environment, whether it's a application or whether it's one of these new 360-degree videos. Is the student, when they go into virtual reality, they're not seeing the real world, they're fully seeing that artificial world. And so what will happen, the way that you use this, as the picture on the top right indicates, is that you put a smartphone, and by the way, it can be an iPod Touch. It doesn't have to, have cellular. This matter, you probably shouldn't be using them. You want to be connected on Wi-Fi when you download these experiences, because the files can be fairly large. But you place the headset inside that front slot. The lenses are adjustable, so it can fit a lot of different faces, and the inner walls do flex in so that most students who wear glasses can wear these when they're wearing them. So what will happen is that you'll launch the app or launch the 360 video. You'll put the phone inside the headset, adjust the lenses, put the head strap on, and you're good to go. And what's nice about these is that they conform to, because of that special material, as you can kind of see with the GIF there in the bottom right. And if you've already opened up the package, you've already experienced this, just how bendy, stretchy it is. It's a very high-end foam. So conformed to fit a lot of faces. They're very hygienic, by the way. It has an impervious skin that sweat, makeup, contaminants really can't get inside of that. You just kind of wipe it down with standard sanitary wipes. And they're very, very durable. So it can be something that you not only make available within the school environment, but even for checkout take-home programs. And this has been something that we've seen happen with library programs. But what's most important to you is, what about all the content that you can use with, and there are probably over 1,000 different virtual reality apps and 360-degree videos that are out there in the world that can be used with these. But as with every other medium, you want to be careful and you want to guide the students into an appropriate library. And there's 3 that I'm going to mention. I'm going to show one just here pretty briefly called Miniverse.io. If you're familiar with the Google Expeditions program, all of that content can be viewed within this headset. And also the Discovery Channel created a library called Discovery VR, which is really nice, but there's a bunch of other content. But those would be the main 3 that I would recommend. And I'll show you Miniverse in just a second. But then the other thing that we gave you, now switching gears, is the Merge Cube. If you've never seen it in action before, this picture here, this animation here on the bottom right will give you the general gist of it. I'm going to demonstrate it. But essentially what's going on is you have an app that's running on a device. And by the way, this picture just happens to show a smartphone, but it can be a tablet. There's other devices that it can run on. But then the app is communicating with the cube with a technology called computer vision. And you can kind of think of the cube as a QR code on steroids, just to be a little bit colloquial with it. And so the cube is communicating information back to the app, such as how am I rotated, how far away or how close am I? And what it does is it creates this very powerful illusion that you're holding a hologram in your hand that you can actually interact with. And it's a physical experience because you're actually holding the cube. And so it fools the brain not only to seeing the hologram, but even feeling that digital object. And for instance, in this picture, when we showed this at one of the world's largest trade shows, most people told us that their brain was fooled into feeling the animated skull in their hand. That's how powerful it is. We've created a lot of STEM content for it. But another thing that I really encourage you to take advantage of is the student generated content angle of this, where they can exert, they can unleash their own creativity. And I'll get into how you can do that in just a minute. But beyond STEM, it can really help you cover any subject area. And there are some really nice tools, some free and open tools that you can use that are really popular in US classrooms to create the 3D objects with them. And then the students can upload their own objects onto the cube. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is actually, let me kind of escape here. I want to show you Miniverse, just so you can see what it looks like in the computer. This is on my laptop, of course. It'll look a little bit different on your phone. But if you go to miniverse.io, there's a couple different things here at your disposal. The first one is if I click on the headset tab, there are over 350 different experiences available, ranging from virtual reality apps, and it's not displaying for some reason, but imagine if you will, as the joke is, there's about 350 different virtual reality apps and 360-degree videos that are listed in here. Okay, it's just kind of pulling up, my Wi-Fi is struggling right now, that are available here, and they've all been curated to be kid appropriate, and most of them are what I would call edutainment. There's another tab here that I'm going to click on that I hope will display a little more successfully. Would appear not. Okay, so if you click on the cube tab, what you would see on here normally is there's about 35 different apps that are available. And they range from, here we go. They started out with, we started out in the consumer market. So some of these are games and brain games, but some that I'd like to point you to that I think will be of interest is Merge Explorer. I'm going to be demonstrating. Moment is a really nice app for SEL programs. Cellular is one that's paid, and it's a deep app for exploring cells. What's another one? I'm going to be showing Object Viewer here on the second line, and then another one I'm going to point you to is HoloGlobe, which is a free app that was created by some people who work with NASA for community engagement, where you can do like near real-time visualization of data sets about Earth systems like cloud cover, humidity, temperature. So it's pretty cool. One other one I'm just going to point you to here on the third row, sorry about that, is Dig, and it's essentially Minecraft on a cube, but it's been used for creativity and even within math classes for, say, have the students create a complex object and then they have to calculate the volume of that object, which is possible because you're building it out of standard unit blocks, right? All right, so what I'm going to do now is switch over to my smartphone, and I'm going to demonstrate Merge Cube in action, if it's going to let me. Sorry about that. Are you seeing my smartphone yet?
Yes, we're seeing it, Andrew.
Great. Okay, sorry, I'm having a little trouble here with my... All right, so what I'm doing now is, sorry, because the phone woke up. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm launching the Merge Explorer app. And what you'll have in here is there's about over 120 different activities or apps within an app, if you will. They're arranged in a series of topic cards that have 100% coverage of the NGSS standards for K through 8, and we are mapping them to individual state standards if that's important to you. But I'm going to kind of just scroll here very quickly from the bottom to the top. So they cover the full range, as I mentioned, from science, from macrobiology, microbiology, earth systems, land systems, water systems, matter, energy, reactions, breeding and inheritance, which is a really, really cool one, renewable resources, non-renewable resources, refraction of light, geology, geology. And here at the top, this is one of my favorite ones. This is about earth systems. This one's called Terraforming the Earth. And so what'll happen here is when I open it up, there are a couple of different things that you'll see. First of all, we have the introductory text, and something that I'm not going to press on because it's phenomenally loud when you're doing it over the wire like this. But here at the top right, do you see the book that has a speaker on it? Looks like an icon. If you press on that, this is Microsoft's immersive reader technology, and it's a wonderful technology for accessibility. It was originally created for readers with dyslexia, but it really helps address a lot of different reading challenges. And what it does is it reads off the text, and it's highlighting the text that it's reading, but you can configure it to different speeds, sizes, fonts, colors, and how darkly you gray out the background of the text that's not being read out. So it's a really nice technology, really for anyone. And by the way, you can play it in different languages, which is pretty cool. But now we're going to get into the different activities, the apps themselves, and there are 4 within this topic module. The very first one I'm going to click on, it's about the different layers of the Earth. And if you've never actually seen Merge Cube in action, this is how it works. So this is augmented reality. So I can see the real world, but now when I put the cube on top of it, we've now imposed digital imagery. We're mixing the real world and the digital world. And I can scale this up and down a little bit, and it is interactive. So I can press on the different layers of the Earth, so the upper core, outer core, lower mantle, upper mantle, crust. And one of the other things that you can do if you have the right devices is you see this icon in the bottom right is stamping. And what that means is I can place them and then I can set the cube down. And they're just hanging in the air. They're still interactive. So I can activate the different layers side by side. And by the way, I'm sitting down and I'm tethered. But what the students love to do is to pick up the tablet and walk around it. And so what happens is this is not only makes it more powerful and more fun and engaging, but what this also does is we now involve another sense. And as you know, as educators, the more senses we involve, the more engaging the learning experience and the more memorable is, the more likely it is that they will retain that information long after the session is over. By the way, another thing that we can do, and I'm not going to do it here because we're short on time, but for those of you with the goggles, you can actually press on this goggles icon and that will put it into virtual reality mode. And all of this content can be viewed in virtual reality mode. It's not yet interactive in VR mode, but you can view it. So it really kind of makes the experience even more immersive. So that is the first activity. The second one, I'm going to kind of run through a little more quickly, is about the tectonic plates. So I press on the different layers, or the different tectonic plates. And again, you could stamp this and kind of put yourself in a circle of different tectonic plates. And we've seen students do that. They love to do that. And then the other two, I'm just going to talk about very quickly. This one, the third one is a visualization of the subduction process. And the fourth one is a 3D cross-section of volcano. And then down here at the bottom, we're tracking the students' progress that they actually do their assignments and interact with each one of these applications. When they first sign in, these will be clear. As they do their assignments, they fill in green. When they do all of them, they earn a check mark, which is great because the students, today's students love to earn digital badges, but this information is also for platform customers is fed back to the web-based teacher dashboard where you can track it. But with the free version of which is what you would initially be using, you'll have access to several cards here, including Terraforming the Earth, Mr. Body, which is kind of a cartoonized anatomy viewer. Galactic Explorer is you're holding the solar system. You can dive in on the different planets and some of their moons. And by the way, the very first topic card, if this was kind of going a little too fast, is a tutorial on the basics of how to use MergeCube, how to use the Merge Explorer app. So the other one I just want to show you very quickly is Object Viewer. With Object Viewer, what you're able to do is the students can create their own objects using tools like Tinkercad, Microsoft Paint 3D is another popular one. If your school is using Minecraft EDU, they can also create the objects in that, then they export them out and then upload them through Object Viewer onto the cube. So the power of that is that since this is primarily a makerspace group, you know, this is a 21st century medium for creating things and expressing oneself, right? So, but even outside of the makerspace, what this enables is to create objects that are related to really any subject area. For example, if I open up my collections, and this is a premium feature for platform customers, is I can assemble different collections of objects related to different subject areas. For instance, I'm going to dive down into ancient Egyptian history, and I've already downloaded this object here, which is the Sphinx. And as I pull it up, you see this is a really beautifully done, sorry about that, is a really beautifully done Sphinx object. Really kind of brings the material life, and again, brings the engaging technology into play where the students, again, are not only kind of fooled into seeing the hologram, but even feeling and physically interacting with the hologram. So you do have the stamping capability, but I want to show you something else that you can do with Object Viewer, which is a technology that we call Place in the World. And when I've used the cube to select where I want to place it, I'm now going to press the icon here at the bottom right, and I've placed it in the world. When I tap on it, I can do things like scale it up and down. I can change its altitude. Let me scale it down just a little bit smaller. I can rotate it. I can move it left or right, but it's still placed. Or I can, by the way, one thing I don't have time for, but I can actually place several objects side by side. but I can also delete them. And so what we've seen, just kind of bring this to life, one of my favorite examples of teachers actually using this, there's an English language arts teacher in Egypt named Anya. And what she does is she has her students read, say the older students will read a Shakespearean novel, and then she assigns them to use Microsoft Paint 3D to create an object that recreates a scene from that novel. And so what that does is it really kind of hammers home the material in a way that's very memorable to them and takes it beyond an intellectual engagement into a very visceral engagement. And they just love doing the assignments. They really engage and lean in during the session. They remember that experience long after that particular classroom session is over. And these are just some other examples here that you see, collections related to Edgar Allan Poe. Here's geology, anatomy. I like spherical harmonics because it combines both art and mathematics. But there, you can have history on here. We already had Egyptian history. Here's some World War II objects. And for the platform customers, as I go back to the homepage, you'll see here that if you don't have the time to create an object, you as the teacher could actually download objects that have already been uploaded to the community. There's about 4,500 different objects here at your disposal. Now, this is a premium feature, having access to all of this, but there is a free version of Object Viewer which does the basics that I've described, and you can the students can upload a small number of objects, but the platform customers have access to a lot more objects, as well as all of the content within the Merge Explorer app. But as I mentioned with Miniverse.io, there's already quite a bit that you can do at no extra cost with the cube that you already have in your hand. I recommend Dig. I recommend some of the free topic cards that are in the Explorer app. And there's just a really lot of powerful things that you can do. And it became, a beloved tool even without the platform. So let me jump back very quickly. And Jolie, I know we're kind of running a little short on time here, but if I can kind of go back very quickly to my desktop. Sorry about that. Some of the other pieces of the platform include, the Merge Explorer app, as I mentioned, the premium features of the Object Viewer app. There are also activity plans, classroom management tools, administrative tool sets, and also with the platform, unlike the free consumer apps, we can do things like enterprise provisioning, integrate it to single sign-on systems, that your school's probably using. And we already went through the demonstration. And the last thing just two other quick thoughts, is that I want to encourage you with the tools that you already have in place, that it's not just for the Makerspace. We've seen these being used very successfully in the classroom, STEM labs, libraries, after-school enrichment programs, even checkout take-home programs, which has been really, really interesting for us to see. And then just kind of jumping down here at the bottom is that I'm sure you have a lot of questions after what I went through. Please feel free to reach out to us at edusales@mergevr.com. Also, there is a 30-day free trial of the platform elements. If you go to trymerge.com, that'll give you 30 days of access to all of the Merge Explorer app content and all of the premium features of the Object Viewer app. So with that, Julie, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, but sure we're probably right about there, and happy to stop. And if there's time, field some questions.
Sure. In fact, Nick was answering some of the questions, Andrew, in the chat. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, just briefly, about, because all these teachers received the handout that you designed for them with the information about the free 30-day trial. So could you talk maybe just a little bit about the pricing structure for continuing the use of that and what it kind of looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways that it can be licensed. I'm going to talk about the standard licensing model, and then we can talk offline if you have a different situation. So what these both have in common is that the licensed users all have access to, by the way, licensing is done on a named user basis. So it's got to be Timmy Jones, Lisa Smith. It can't be iPad 1, iPad 2, iPad 25. but all the licensed users have access to all of the Merge Explorer app content, which, as I mentioned, has 100% coverage of the next generation science standards for K through 8. And yes, we're mapping it to Iowa standards as well. They all have access to the premium features of Object Viewer, which include being able to upload 50 objects and assemble collections. And there's a bunch of new features that are about to come out. Matter of fact, I was noticing here in the demo, because we just did a new release, so, oh, there's already some new stuff in here I haven't played with yet. We do the enterprise provisioning, and if you have, the teachers all have access to the web-based components like the classroom management tools, being able to track student progress against Explorer app content, and you'll be able to look into their portfolio of objects that they've uploaded to Object Viewer to do things like make sure they're making progress against their assignments, and maybe for the older kids, like what the heck are they putting in there? Sometimes kids will be creative in less than appropriate ways. We can also do the enterprise provisioning and integration to single sign-on systems that we support, which are Google, ClassLink, Clever, Microsoft. If you use something else, let us know, we can talk about it. So here's what's different about the two licensing models, is that the class pack is really kind of designed for elementary school classrooms, or sometimes enrichment programs, gifted, talented programs, where the same 25 students are usually working with the same teacher all day, every day, or nearly all day, every day. And so that one is $995 a year for 25 students who have access to everything at all times. Are more popular, and we've had, I would say, about 25% of our customers go with that licensing model. Our most popular licensing model, though, is the lab pack, because for just under $2,500 a year, what we enable is that all of the students and all of the teachers in the school can be uploaded in the system. They all have access to all the things that I mentioned, but it is limited to 30 concurrent student users, because it's designed, as the name would suggest, it's designed for a STEM lab, Makerspace, library, what I call a periodic use case, where, say, Mrs. Wilson's third graders roll into the STEM lab Monday morning from 9 to 10. Nobody else is in there at that time, and then they leave, and then Mrs. Jones' fourth graders come in, et cetera, so that the concurrent user parameter doesn't really cause any issues. And that's our most popular licensing model, as you would guess. We have learned the hard way when people ask, well, how much for the whole school or how much for the whole district? Like, okay, what does that mean exactly? That can mean very different things. But what I'll just kind of put out there is that we do have some pretty substantial discounts available when you're buying more than one SKU of the license, or if you're committing to more than 12 months at a time. And these particular prices are one unit for 12 months, but you can get into very substantial discounting if you're buying several and committing to 2 years, 3 years, and beyond. But that's the basics of how it works.
So how about, Andrew, since all of these educators that are participating in this program received either 2 cubes or a cube and a set of VR goggles. So if they have that, what kind of options are there for them that isn't the class pack? So based on what they already currently have, is that something they can buy on their own phone or a device to still have
in addition to, so first of all, let me kind of talk about what you can do for free with what you have in your hand right now. Is back on Miniverse.io, if you remember that, when I had that headset tab, I think all of that content on there is free. And you're talking about 350 different VR apps and 360 videos. With Merge Cube, if you go to the Cube tab of Miniverse.io, you'll see that there are quite a few apps on there that are free. There is a free version of Object Viewer, so you can do the basics of what I was talking about. But say one of the differences is you don't have the ability to create collections. You can upload 5 objects at a time rather than 50. However, there is a licensing model that's not on here. It's more of a consumer homeschooler model. It's the individual license. And for it's just under $100 a year. There's an individual account, but it can be shared across 3 devices. You could sign in across 3 devices, and you'll have access, I believe now it's to all of the Merge Explorer app content. So you would be able to do that, maybe project it up to the front of the room. You don't have the student level tracking in there. You don't have the classroom management tools or the activity plans, but at least you have access to all of the content that's within Merge Explorer. I'm sorry, and I totally failed to mention with these licenses, as you saw in here, we provide 25 cubes with the class pack, 30 cubes with the lab pack, and that's through this year. It's changing on January 1st, but as of right now, that's how it works.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Andrew. And if they have specific questions about, there you go, there's your contact. If so teachers, if you are interested in looking at this beyond what you've already received through Making STEM Connections, you can contact this fabulous team and they can walk you through that. Also had a question that Nick answered in the chat room about what kind of devices.
Yep.
And so Nick shared that it can work with iPads, iPod Touch, Android, and Windows devices. And Nick also shared that that you are working on the opportunity to use it with Chromebooks. And so we look forward to seeing that in the future.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Great, we'll sign
Andrew,
off.
for sharing that. Yes, thank you very much. And I will forward these teachers on if they have specific questions
Fantastic.
for you beyond this.
All right. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye. Okay. So I think we're back to me. Yes. Yes. Okay. So now what I need to do, move this up a little bit here so I can do. I have too many things open on the computer now. Okay. There we go. So I hope that that was useful to you and gave you some information on the Merge products that they have. I think it's a really exciting opportunity to introduce students to the concepts of augmented and virtual reality. And as Andrew was saying, Andrew is one of the founders of the company, by the way, that this is really a future tool for learning. And I think that our students of today are going to be using augmented and virtual reality as a regular part of workforce materials in the future. So I'm excited to see how you guys use them, what students are able to do with them. I think the object viewer is fabulous. We're going to talk during the webinar about Tinkercad and how you can upload things that you create in Tinkercad. Oftentimes people use that for 3D printed objects, but imagine you could even prototype files from Tinkercad or even 3D Paint onto your cube and see what they look like first before you do something else with them, like print them on a 3D printer or something. So I'm excited to hear it. I look forward to you guys sharing either on the Facebook page or share with me through email your ideas and your, you know, the ways that students are using them. I share the Merge products with a lot of educators everywhere I go, and I'm just excited to hear how we can expand our use. And I think it's a great story because as we were sharing at the PDs this summer about how there was a period of time when you could buy these cubes for $1 a piece at Walmart. And what's incredible about that is that they were $1 because nobody understood what they did. And it really leads us into what we're going to be talking about today of technology, that, you know, you can have technology, sorry, here we go. You can have all kinds of great technology, but if you don't know what to do with it, what's the use or what's the value of it? It becomes something that ends up on the clearance rack for $1. So it just perfectly lends us into what we're going to be talking about today in terms of technology. So let's not let it be something that just sits on a shelf and collects dust. So again, we had our friends from MergeCube. You are certainly welcome to contact them directly, especially to tell them that you are, you know, from the Iowa group that participated in their webinar, and use that as much as you can to see if you can get, you know, extra help or service from them. I think it's really a great opportunity to show people all across the country how teachers in Iowa are really on that cusp on the edge of how to use technology and what it looks like in a learning environment. So I'm excited to see how you guys are using it. So as we're talking about technology today, with the time that we have left, I find that whenever I'm working with educators and we bring up the concept of technology, that there is a small group of people who feel very comfortable in that realm. And it is a part of what they do on a regular basis, either personally or professionally. They are a technology integrationalist for their school or their district, or they personally have a hobby. Maybe they studied computer science in some capacity in college. But a much larger amount of educators that I work with have almost a fear of using technology. And it seems to be very much based on being uncomfortable with not knowing. And so what I hope to help you with as we move through this today is to understand this concept of not to fear technology, but learn technology. And it's okay to say, I don't know, I'm not fully versed in, I don't completely understand. That is very okay. And I know that's not in our nature as educators. It is, we feel that the responsibility to the students that we're working with to know all the answers, because that's why we're there. But we need to release ourselves from that and become a student along with the students that we're working with in learning. So, finding ways to, facilitate from the side, that guide on the side as students are exploring technology, and know that this is the world they've grown up in. They are the digital natives in terms of technology, and many of us are digital immigrants. Even if you grew up in a world where you had an iPad when you grew up, it looks very different than the technology that our kids and our students have access to today. So don't fear technology, learn technology. Give yourself the permission to be uncomfortable and to learn more about how to use it. So I just want to show you a couple examples here of some ways that technology is being used in a classroom. These are, I'm going to see if I can play this YouTube video, but these are some 6th grade students from Clarion Goldfield Dow's middle school, and they do a very big unit on Rube Goldberg machines. And so their teacher, Jay Jackson, asked them to incorporate technology and circuitry into their Rube Goldberg machine. And it was fascinating to see how they did this. And we're going to talk a little bit about what technology is. Most people assume that technology means something with a screen and something that has battery power. And that is not the only definition of technology. Technology is a tool. It is something that we use to accomplish something else. So a pencil is a form of technology. And in what you see here in these pictures are ways that students use these tools in very different ways as a part of their Rube Goldberg machine. So I'm going to see if it's going to let me play this YouTube clip. We'll see if I can share this. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to start it over here. There we go.
It's shutting. Yes!
Okay, let's try it one more time. It happens quite fast.
Go. It's shutting. Yes!
So what they did, let me see if I can go back, because I think it's pretty awesome. I can do this. I can't get it.
Yes!
Okay, let's do it this way.
Yes! Go. It's shutting.
Okay, so here's what's happening, is they set up a circuit. So there's a button here at the top, and you receive some of these in your kit, some type of button or on-off switch, and that the door closing then is pressing that button and then is completing the circuit. And I thought that was a very creative way for them to think about that kind of technology and use it in a very different way. So we can go back to here. Okay, so here you see another example in this picture is the book was closing and pressed on that button and also completed the circuit. I thought that was a really ingenious way for them to do that. And here's another example of them using DC motors. So you can see here the students labeled this picture in this diagram here. They have it set up here where they're going to make it so that the rope pulls out a card and the paper towel roll, and it's going to drop an Oreo cookie into a glass of milk. Again, very creative way of using some what we might consider high-tech and low-tech materials all together. I always like to showcase things that students are using in their learning environment from the Making STEM Connection Kit. I always like to include that so you can kind of envision how it might be used. As we're talking about technology, as I said, technology doesn't always have to be high tech. It can very much be low tech too. And I have this book, Unscrewed, that I would like to show to you. I think it is a fabulous resource to think about maybe some unused technology that you have access to. Old hair dryers, answering machines, other devices that have components inside of them that you might be able to use. And I love this quote that comes from this book, and it says, "Let's go on a treasure hunt. Let's plunder old gizmos and gadgets for the good parts inside. If you are curious, if you want to know what's on the inside of that plastic or metal case, if you like to know how things work, this hunt is for you." I feel like it's a Shel Silverstein kind of poem. And I want to show you here. Let's see if I can. Oh, that camera didn't get hooked up. I can show you, actually. Let me do it this way. This book, see if it works. Okay, so here's what the book looks like. And what I really enjoy about how this book is set up, for example, inkjet printers. So back in the day, sorry, let me get this tilt right. Back in the day of using inkjet printers, you know, that there was let me go back. Inkjet printers are probably something that your school or your organization has that maybe isn't being used anymore, and it's sitting somewhere collecting dust because you say, I don't know what to do with it anymore because now we have a laser printer. Let's just say that might be your situation. Well, those old inkjet printers can be a great source of components, of materials, of supplies for creating and making things. And there's technology on the inside that we tend to cover up with a plastic. So we don't know what's internal. And students are very familiar with printers and understand that it has the capability to print colors or images, lines, and things on paper. But what's really happening on the inside? So this book gives you some information on how to dissect, if you will, different pieces of technology. And it tells you, as you see here on this side, what you might be able to harvest. So what are those things? And it calls it a treasure cache and tells you what you get out of it. What are the different things? What are the tools that are required in order for you to harvest these types of materials? And then it gives you even sometimes some cautions of something that may be inside of that piece of technology that you don't want to be mishandled. So maybe it needs to be disposed of in a very specific way, or you know, you want students to be very careful with different tools around that. But this book does a really great job of walking you through. Let's see if we can find another one that you might have. Here we go. Here's the hair dryer. So if you have some old hair dryers, what are things that you can harvest from the hair dryer and students can take apart? This is great for those precision screwdriver, those little teeny screwdrivers that you received from your Lowe's delivery, to take those apart. There's also fax machines. If you have some old fax machines laying around, this book will talk about what you can do with those different things and harvest a lot of tools or a lot of materials from inside of there. So I wanted to share that with you because I think that's a really great resource. And it's a good book to give you some kind of direction in that process. So along with that is this idea that the tools or the materials that came in your kit, they're not just for building things, but they can certainly be used for unbuilding things. And you can learn a lot about technology by taking that technology apart and by investigating what's on the inside and how does it work and what does the motor inside look like, or what causes this part to happen, or why do I push the button? What is the button attached to? So it's like doing a digital dissection of a piece of technology. So they begin to learn more about and understand the technology that they're using, and then maybe reconstruct new pieces or new devices or assemble them in different ways, besides literally harvesting tools and materials like motors, LEDs, circuit boards, rechargeable batteries, gears, switches, magnets, all those different kinds of things. So giving your students opportunities to unbuild can also be very powerful. Another really cool, exciting thing to try is circuit bending. So we have a student here with a cassette player. So take yourself way back to your Sony Walkman days. And if you can find one of these in a secondhand store somewhere, it is an incredible opportunity to study how sound devices work and how basic electronics are set up. And what you see this student doing is here, let me point out with my little pointer, okay, right here are the wheels. There's a band that goes around it, and those wheels are what turns the tape to move the magnetic strip. You see the batteries right here, and this is the main circuit board. And what this student is doing is you have to have batteries because you're going to actually play this, and this this aux cord right here is hooked up to a speaker so that you can hear it. Could be headphones too. And then as you push play, right here, as you push the play button, the physical button, these wheels start to move and it starts to play music. And what he is doing is he's using one of the alligator clips to short the circuit. And what it does is it causes the sound to be transmitted in a different way as the tape is playing. And it's kind of a cool way to mix music or get different sounds, is by circuit bending. So the circuit is still happening, and these are just AA batteries, right? So this is not enough power that someone's going to get hurt from touching this board or touching these metal components here. Okay, we're not plugging this into the wall. This is just run off of these DC batteries. And so the student is exploring this circuit board and this piece of technology to learn more about how it works. So it's not always a complete mystery. I feel like we look at technology as magic, and that's some of that fear that we experience because we don't understand it. We don't understand how it works. And by taking technology apart, you build that foundation for understanding how technology works. Something else to talk about are standards. So Iowa has recently voluntarily accepted these computer science standards, which are a set of K12 standards, computer science standards, and there's a link here to those standards. I know you can't access the link, but just so you know, you can look that up, and actually I can probably copy and paste that and put it into the group chat, or I'll leave that there so you guys can see what it looks like. But this is a listing here of the K12 standards. And something that I want to point out about them is the definition and the vision of bringing computer science standards to the state of Iowa. And we see here as definition that computer science is understanding how and why technologies work, exploring whether and how technology could solve real-life problems, investigating procedures, creating solutions, and learning about computer systems, programming, data, networks, and the effects on society and the individual. That's how we're defining computer science. And the vision is that all Iowa students will engage in the concepts and practices of computer science through an intentional progression of experiences in order to prepare them to become enterprising citizens that positively impact society. What I love about the vision statement is this idea about progressions, right? And preparing them. So we need to start that process, and we have to start sometimes at a very simple stage, very beginning uses of technology. And then it is our job as educators to grow and mature that. So looking for opportunities that have a low threshold to introduce students to technology, and then helping them to progress through their understanding and usage. And that progression may exceed your personal skills, your abilities to understand, and that is okay. It is okay to not always be in the complete no. And so don't fear the technology, learn the technology. And know that that's the impact, that positive impact that we're going to have on society, that our students look at the computer not just as something that we can do our homework on, but as a tool, a way to accomplish something, a way to get something, to do something that I want. And they see that in their future opportunities in the workforce. So, some things to keep in mind when you are including technology in a makerspace. So I have 5 ideas or suggestions for you here. First of all, one is to have a computer that can be used in programming. And the wonderful thing that we're seeing across the state is students are having more and more access to a computer that can do programming. And one of those computers can be your cell phone. So what cell phones can do today, totally different than 10 years ago, is you can be writing code, using this as a tool, as a piece of technology to improve something. So it doesn't always have to just be a desktop, but students need to have access to something that can be used in coding. And I've listed here some things that you might use in the world of programming, and I'm going to show you some examples of these. So first, I want to point out to you Scratch. I'm sure that many of you have either heard of Scratch or are already using Scratch programming in some capacity in your classroom. If you are not, I highly recommend it for a couple of reasons. One, it is free, and it is based on a browser search. So it does not have to be downloaded onto any device. You can create your own account. So that, let's say they go to the library, let's say they go to the Burlington Public Library and visit Becky, and they use a computer there, they can open up their own account, save it, and then access that exact same account at school and still use that. It's not based on any one certain device, it's based on the browser and finding it on the internet. And I put the address down here. The second thing that I really like about Scratch is it is very simple, very easy to get started with. And there are many tutorials on how to use it, but even just playing with it, just beginning that process of learning how to use it is very simple and easy. Scratch 3.0 came out at the beginning of this calendar year, and it has some new features. It looks a little bit different, and it has new things that it can do. But I just want to point out here on the side that this is where you find your blocks. And again, it looks a little bit different. This is our sprite right here. And the sprite that it always comes up to begin with, the default sprite, is the cat. But you can change that. And this window down here allows you to look at all the different sprites, and you can select it. I'm going to open up Scratch here in just a second and kind of show you some things on it. But this part of the window right here allows you to look at the sprite and where the sprite is located. Right here on the X and Y axis, it allows you to look at the magnification of the size of the sprite, the direction, which way the sprite is facing. And this little part right here is the background. They call it a stage. And you can select different stages or backgrounds directly here. When you do that, this is something I find that people get really confused on, is because you write separate code for each of these. So each sprite will have its own code. So if you click on one sprite and then you go to another and then all of a sudden you say, what happened to all my code? That's because each one will have its own coding window here. Same with the background. So you can code for the background to do different things as well. So I'm gonna go to this really quick. We're gonna click on this and I need to go to my shared screen so I can show you what it looks like. So you can see it. Okay, and let me exit out of my chat. Let's see, hold on. I'm gonna close my chat there so that it's not in the way. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what I want to point out is this is where you sign in. So if you already have an account, you can sign in there, but you don't have to. You don't have to have an account. You can go directly to create and just start creating something. Once you've made it, you can then take some time to open up accounts so that you can save it. As soon as you open it, there's a little tutorial down here that walks you through the beginning, but I just want to show you something really quick that is exciting about this new version of Scratch. Is, first of all, you see all the blocks here. So these are your look blocks, and if you're not familiar with Scratch, these bubbles, these inserted bubbles here are variables. So those are all things that you have the opportunity to change or manipulate. Some of them have drop downs so that you can select different things, and some of them you just click on it and can change it from 2 seconds to 5 seconds. So you just type that in. But where I want to go down here is into this very bottom left-hand corner, and these are the extension blocks. And this is where Scratch 3.0, I think, really shines, because we see lots of new opportunities for new blocks. So a couple of them I want to point out is text to speech. So right here, when you click on this, what it will do is go to those blocks in your coding window where we just were, and you will see those blocks with options. So you can make your sprite talk, verbally talk. So you would text it and then it will speak. What I love so much in conjunction with that is this part over here where it's combined with Google Translate. So now not only can it speak, but it can speak in multiple languages. So you can have your sprite speaking in Spanish. It can have written text in a language. So for example, let me click on this. So what it does is it now shows me the translate blocks. So if I put the translate block over here, okay, and I want my sprite to say hello, I'm going to insert this into where it said hello, and I'm going to say, instead of English, I want it to do it in, let's see, let's find one. Let's say French, okay? So now when I run this program, okay, when I push play, what will happen is the cat will say hello in French for 2 seconds. I personally don't have to know French for it to do that. It will translate it for me. Whatever I put as a term, it will use Google Translate to do that. I can also do that text to speech and have it actually enunciate. So imagine the multicultural experiences that you can create here. Something else I want to point out is that students can actually code in multiple languages too. So that Google Translate is in here. So if their blocks can be in another language besides English. So all of these directional terms can be that way. One other one that I want to point out, you see microbit. So you all received at least 2 microbits. So you can connect microbits to Scratch, but there's also Makey Makey. So now what I can do, you all receive 6 Makey Makeys as a part of your kit. What I can do is I can bring this block over here, and now what I can do is when the space bar we can hook up the Makey Makey, you see the icon right there. So now when I push the space bar through Makey Makey, the cat will now say hello in French. And all I did was use 3 blocks. It's just the way I put those 3 blocks together. So again, Scratch is very simple to begin to use, but I love a lot of these new blocks that they have that expand the use of Scratch and really help to introduce students to the idea of coding. And what I love about using microbits or even the Makey is now we're talking about external components hooked up to your computer that you can now use as an input or control for something else. So you can get it to do something that you want. And you see that computer as a piece that is used to create and make something. It's one component of that. So Scratch is a really wonderful introduction into that and is very user-friendly. I used it with our seniors. So these are retired people that were taking makers classes at the Science Center, and I introduced them to Scratch, and they were super excited about it and thought it was a really simple way for them to begin to use their computer in a very different way. So let's see, what else can I show you really quick? Oh, Scratch Junior. So for those of you who are working with our younger students, Scratch Junior is a wonderful way to begin that process using blocks that are not defined by words or numbers. Instead, they use arrows. So you can see here in this very simple screenshot that they can code for these different animals, and they can tell the pig, so this would be their sprite, they can tell the pig how to move using these action blocks down here. And they just drag and drop them into an order, and they can pick the background, the stage, similar to regular Scratch, and they can begin this process of coding and learning that is not dependent on a specific language. So again, remember our standards are asking us to progress through. So any opportunity we have to start students at a young age or whatever their entry point is for coding, if Scratch Junior brings that down to an even easier beginner level, students, but it gives you the instruction of how to begin and how to use and how to help younger students utilize Scratch Junior. So I highly recommend that book as well. Okay, so the next part that I get a lot of questions about is some of the technology that comes in your kit. So I want to walk you through a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about the Hummingbird, and I know not everybody received the Hummingbird, but I just want to take a few minutes to kind of introduce you to this. And I want you to know that I have been talking with the company BirdBrain Technologies about opportunities to do webinars. I've been talking with the MergeCube people, I've been talking with the Root Robot people, and we want to provide you as many opportunities. I'm going to be doing some trainings also specifically on each of these types of technologies. So this is just kind of a, just to begin that process of understanding how to use it. So for the Hummingbird bit, to begin this, you can go to BirdBrain Technologies. That's the company that makes the Hummingbird, and their website, as it's listed down here, their website will lead you to this page. And the Our Robots tab will take you to what you can purchase. The Get Started tab will take you to this window. And what you're going to do is, these are the 3 different products that they have. And so if you've had the older version of Making STEM Connections, then we use the Hummingbird Duo. This year, if you received the Hummingbird materials, you got the Hummingbird Bit. So you would select that. You would click on this tab, and then you would move down to select what type of device you are using. So if you're using a Chromebook with it, you would click on Chromebook, Mac, Windows. Or any of these others, if that's how you choose to use it. So you click on those, and it will guide you through finding where you can get started using these materials, okay? Then at the bottom of that same screen, if you scroll down, it will give you these options for how to use the Hummingbird bit with a Chromebook. It will show you, some of these will be highlighted and others will not, and it will show you what your options are for using the Hummingbird bit. So it will already tell you what you can and cannot use, okay? And one thing I want to point out that I recently learned about, I'm going to show you here in a little bit, is this Bird Blocks. Bird Blocks is an app that you can download onto a tablet, and you can use a Bluetooth connection to your Hummingbird materials. So you don't have to have it hooked up to a computer. If your students have iPads, or you're using iPads, or their one-to-one device is a tablet of some sort, they can still use the Hummingbird by downloading this Bird Blocks app. So again, you select where you're at, and then it will tell you what your options are. Okay, so then it will take you to whatever is that operating system that you can use with your Hummingbird blocks. So for us, when we did at the training, we had a device that had Windows on it. And so this is what it took you to, using Makecode. And I'm going to show you Makecode here in a little bit. But once you get here, these are all 4 tabs that you can go through to learn how to use the Hummingbird material. So again, it very much walks you through this option. So if you click on Program, for example, you will go to this window, and it shows you right here the options you have. Getting started. This is a 6 set of video clips, little vignettes of literally how to get started. And sometimes the video is 4 seconds long. That's it. It's just showing you very quickly, here's how you plug it in. Here's how you open it up on your computer. Here's how you do this. Then you can come down here to using the outputs. So how do you hook up a single color LED, a tricolor LED? How do you use the LED screen on the microbit? That's this part that has the array, the red lights. The position servo. Position servo is the servo or motor that moves in specific increments of angles. So it can move 180 degrees and then back to 0. That's all the position servo does. The rotation servo moves in one direction continuously, and you can control the speed, okay? And then we have buzzer and all these other components. Those are all outputs. Then you can go through on the inputs. How do I set up the dial sensor, which is like a potentiometer? How do I set up the distance sensor? And when you click on each of these, it will again go through a set of these little videos with step-by-step directions on how to do it, okay? So you yourself should, go through this, kind of walk through that process and be comfortable. But your students can do that too. You don't have to be the sole instructor for this. They're used to going on YouTube and finding out the directions through videos anyway. So just give them that opportunity of how to begin, walk them through this process, and then they can figure it out from there. Once they understand how to hook it up, then they're gonna go to this. Now, again, this is what it pops up for me because I'm saying that I'm using Windows device. If you're using a Chromebook or a MacBook, this part right here might look a little bit different, but I'm selecting to go to Makecode. So when you click on that, let's see if I didn't put the screen on here. I thought I put the Makecode screen on here, but I guess I didn't. But the Makecode looks very much like Scratch, and it will show you how to get to that part of it. And let's see, I have a little bit of time, so why don't I just go to that. And show you. Okay, what it looks like. So if I go to Makecode, this is where it's really important. Makecode is made by Microsoft, and it's a specific platform for using with your microbit. So anybody, even if you just got microbit, which everybody got at least 2 microbits, you can go to Makecode to code your microbit. You don't have to. Remember, you can use Scratch with it as well. But everybody who has a microbit can use this platform. What's important, this is very important, if you're using the Hummingbird materials, you have to access Makecode through that Hummingbird website so that you get these Hummingbird blocks. If you just go to makecode.org, you will get to this site and it will look like this, but it will not have the Hummingbird blocks as an option. Okay, so I just want to point out that's why you have to go through that Hummingbird website. Once you get here, you can bookmark this so that you can, get to it. And this is the key. These are those Hummingbird blocks that are, here's your single color LED, here's your tricolor LED, your position servo, the rotation servo, okay, all those other things you now can code for through MakeCode. And this right here, okay, this setup looks very much like Scratch. It's drag and drop. So you start with your basic blocks. So, we might put over here our LEDs, and then our input is on your, let's say it's this one. Okay, and I click it on here, and this button, button A, is on your microbit. So what we're saying is when you push button A, show this on the LED screen. Okay, now what just happened is this over here on the side. Okay, this is like a practice template, and it will show you now, if I push on button A, it'll do it. So you can kind of see what's going to happen before you actually downloaded it to, if you actually downloaded it to the microbit. So you can kind of prototype it or try it out over here. Then we can add one of our Hummingbird blocks. So let's say our tricolor LED, and I can say how much red, how much green, and how much blue I want to show up in the light. Now, you're not going to see that over here because this doesn't have the actual LEDs hooked up to it. But this is how we would build it. So now I've written a very simple code. And now what I need to do is download it to the microbit. This is where people get confused sometimes. So I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoint and show you how to do this. Okay. Okay. So here's where this becomes important, right here. So you can, on through the Hummingbird website, you can go to the, or it'll have this link, but you can also do it through MakeCode right here. Is this link will take you to this direction page on how to upload your code to your microbit. Here's what's important, okay? You have to tell your computer where to send the code to. So if you just push play, it doesn't understand where it's going. So you have to set that system up of how to download it as a file directly to your microbit drive. So when you're using it on a computer, you just have to get that system set up so it knows how to send it, what kind of file. So you see right here a hex file, and how to set it up to your microbit drive. So this website right here, this MakeCode microbit right here, and I'll copy and paste that and put that into the chat. That website will give you the directions of exactly how to set that up so that it can be uploaded. So when you download it, it downloads it to your microbit so that you already, so it has that path to get there. Okay, otherwise the computer doesn't know where to send it. Once you set it up, it will be good. So I'm going to copy. No, I didn't want to go to it. Okay, here's what it is right here. So it shows you how to transfer the program. Oh, I'm sorry, I realize you can't see it. Okay, how to transfer the program based on, this is also very important, which browser type you have, okay, and which one you're using. So if you click on this, if you're using Firefox or you're using Internet Explorer, it will walk you through the process of how to set that up, okay? So really important step that sometimes if you don't do that, it gets very frustrating because then you don't know how to send it to your microbit. Okay, so I want to see if it'll, nope. I'm trying to copy the address. I have too many tabs open. Okay, back to here. So again, that's just a really basic introduction to using, first of all, the microbit, but also the microbit with the Hummingbird setup. Okay, and here's that app that I was telling you about, the Bird Blocks app. So I learned this when I went to the Makers convening a couple weeks ago in Pittsburgh, that they had set up they were using a Kindle Fire, and they had downloaded the Bird Blocks app onto it, and then they were communicating to the microbit through Bluetooth. So the microbit was still hooked up to the Hummingbird itself, the Arduino, and then they were coding for it with a block-based coding through this app. And I did not realize before that that was another way that you could interface with the material. So you didn't have to plug it in through a USB port to a computer. So I thought that was a really great thing that I wanted to share. I put a video of it on the Facebook page if you want to go back and look at it. So just another way to use that device. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is the Root robot. And I'm very excited to tell you that I have been talking with the educator staff at Root Robot, and they are going to speak with us at our next webinar. Jeff Motes, who is the person that I had listed that was going to help us, Jeff is a football coach, and his team, I believe, is making it farther through the state championships, and so he is not able to join us, but the folks from Root themselves are going to, and I'm working with them on some opportunities to provide some joint PD for you on how to use these robots and make it so that you have lots of opportunities to expand student learning using this device. So just some things I want to point out now that you have it, and what I love about Root Robot is you can take it out of the box, charge it, and already start using it, which I think is really exciting. It's got a very low threshold for beginning to use it, but I just wanted to show you this graphic so that you can see a lot of the things that Root does and a lot of the options that it has. So power button is what looks like its nose, that cute little yellow button that's here. And it has bumpers in the front, and those bumpers right here, you can code for that to say if it bumps into something. So you could write a subroutine in your code that says anytime your Root robot is moving, if it bumps into something, to do this action. And it could be back up so many centimeters, turn in the opposite direction, and then continue on with your code, or whatever you want it to do. The eyes themselves, what look like eyes, are light sensors. So you can write code that says something about if the light is low, if the light is high, to do something. And the quadrants of Root, if you look at these 4 quadrants, each of those has a touch sensor to it. So you can also code for students. It's kind of like Simon. Remember Simon game, where if you touch this button, then it lights up, or you could follow it. So you can code very simply if they touch, if someone touches this quadrant, that the robot does this, versus if they touch this quadrant, or the code continues, or maybe there's a musical note that's attached to that, or the lights change. So the lights, the LED lights, are in this kind of cross pattern right here, and you can control what color of light and what pattern of light that they have, or that the robot uses. So those are also options. The marker lift right here. Okay, this is kind of important. I've seen some teachers that are trying to jam the marker into this spot. Just so you know, you push the marker, you take the lid off first thing. You take the lid off of the marker. It comes with 2 markers, but you can use any whiteboard type marker. You can even use a permanent marker if you're drawing on actual paper or even fabric. It doesn't have to be a whiteboard marker. It's just if you use it on a whiteboard, you want to use a marker that wipes off. But you put the marker in there, and you will kind of feel a tension and a snap. You want to push it to that point and then stop. you will code for the marker to go down, to drop. So there is coding buttons and tabs and coding language to drop the marker. So don't force the marker down in there and try to write with it by pushing harder. The robot will do that part itself. And then you can also code for the marker to lift up so you don't have to yank the marker out. Okay, then on the underneath side of the robot, there's a color sensing bar. So you can code for your robot to follow, very similar to Ozobots, to follow certain colors or follow certain lines. It has the ability to sense magnetism or magnetic fields and move towards things or move away from things. These are the drive wheels. This is the only thing I would say about Root that is probably a challenge. And the thing is those wheels, because it's so low to the ground, can gather a lot of dirt and dust. And I do know that educators that use these robots on a regular basis on the floor, that dust can get caught in there and can kind of clog up the wheels. So as a recommendation, I wouldn't run the Root robot on the bare floor often. That's what that mat is for, that unfolding whiteboard kind of mat. I would run it on that mat as a protection against dust and other kind of materials that are on the floor. It's just a suggestion, but that's something to keep in mind. And then there is an eraser back here. So you can also lift and drop the eraser. So you could have this robot draw a line, and during part of that line drawing, it can erase it or not erase it. So that could be a variable also in your coding. So they have a wonderful website that I put down here that gives you some really good information. And like I said, I'm working with them to provide you some more opportunities, and they're extremely excited to be working with teachers from Iowa. And so we're going to get something set up for that to get you more personalized opportunities. Okay, so for those of you who have Cubelets, I wanted to show you an example of how you could use Cubelets. Now, Cubelets are probably one of my favorite things in the kit, only because they can be used in so many different ways. But here's something that I saw that somebody did that I thought was a really great idea of turning the Cubelets into a drawing robot.
Look at that faster. When it's faster. It's like one of those little symbol things. Yay, it's drawing. Yeah.
So what I like about that, let's see if I can pause it, okay, is they just took a marker and they taped it to this robot. And so they have the block that is the rotating block facing down that is causing the bot itself to move. So they've created this kind of randomized drawing robot by attaching a marker to the Cublet. And I think that's such an amazing way to think differently about the robot. So they could look at, you could challenge them to think very differently about the orientation of the blocks, or would they always get the same pattern if they always put these same blocks together that way, like a spirograph? Could they get a different type of pattern based on the way that the amount of weight that's used, or how many markers they have, or this, I don't know if you can tell, but it has the potentiometer block, the block that has a dial on here so they can speed it up or slow it down. You could also put inputs of like a distance sensor or light sensor, and maybe this robot acts differently when the light is on than when the light is off. And these are all challenges that you could provide to students using these very simple, very easy ways to introduce them to coding. And it doesn't require a screen. So they work well for traveling, for taking them on the road, or someplace that doesn't have great Wi-Fi, or if in that room or that space you don't have access to a screen for coding, that's a really great way to also introduce or encourage the use of technology. So cubelets come from the company called Modular Robotics. They also have a lot of resources on their website, a lot of educational resources as well that you can look up. By the way, I will tell you, if you are having problems with any of your cubelets, there is a 1-year warranty on the cubelets, and what you can do is send me an email, contact me, and I will add to our email string Jen Titus from Modular Robotics, and she will then connect you to the department that can help you either to fix it or to replace it. So if you have, and a few people have told me something's, something with one of our cubes isn't working, and so I'll just connect you through email conversations to those people. So here's some interesting facts as we're embarking on more and more technology in the classroom, some things to think about, and this is from code.org's page. I saw some people have been talking in the chat room about code.org, and these are some statistics that they have updated. I think these are 2017 statistics, that Iowa currently has almost 3,000 open computing jobs, which is 2.5 times the average demand rate, which means there is need. We need students to have the capabilities to use technology and computing skills in the workforce. And it is never too early to start, and it's never too late to start. The average salary for a computing occupation in Iowa, you see here, is around $77,000, which is higher than the average salary of just non-computer occupation of $44,000. So we're providing lots of opportunities within our state for students to have, to join the workforce and have lots of opportunities and sustainability that way. Interestingly, in 2017, we only had 459 computer science graduates in the state of Iowa, and only 14% of those were female. So that shows you, look at this, how many openings and how many computer science graduates. Now, you do not have to have a computer science degree to work in a computing job. I think that's very important to know. But we need to help this number here to grow, to help to fill more and more of these positions. And we need to help all students have a connection to computer science so that they can use those skills in these computing jobs. And speaking of jobs, Steve Jobs said that computer science is a liberal art. It's something that everybody should be exposed to, and everyone should have a mastery to of some extent. It is not just for the tag students, and it's not just for those that are interested in computing. It is a basic skill. It's a liberal art, and it's imperative that we provide our students with these opportunities. Okay, number 2, make technology accessible to students. It's oftentimes we like to say, well, this is a really expensive piece of equipment, or we all can't use it, or something like that. So how do we make it more accessible to them? Is there a sign-up system, a checkout system? Is the workspace appropriate for child size, for our desks or our tables to be using different kinds of technology on different types of safety equipment? So something to think about. I picked this picture here off the internet, not because it looks super fancy, but because it's an organization that is using what it has resources. There are different kinds of tables. There are some workstation tables, but there are also stations set up at these other tables. The tables are at different heights. It's kind of mismatched, and that's okay. Your technology room doesn't have to be squeaky new and shiny and color coordinated and all of that. It just needs to be accessible. So let's make sure that students feel comfortable in that space and that they can have access to those different kinds of technologies. Number 3, technology is just a tool. It doesn't have to be electrical. It doesn't always have to have a screen. Low-tech tools such as screwdrivers and saws and pliers are very important pieces for students to use also. And sometimes you might design a challenge that says not to use technology components that are electrical. What are analog ways, or old school as we might call it, ways of using technology? So here's a picture, for example, during one of our maker workshops with middle school students a few years ago. They made this music box. And so they cut wood to make a box, and you see some hinges here so that it has a top. And they made a very simple dowel wheel with a cardboard tube. And what these are here, these are brads or fasteners, which you got in your kit. And they've arranged them in very specific pattern on this. And these are bobby pins for you to use in your hair to secure your hair. And they have stapled them at different lengths. So what happens is you turn this wheel and it's a music box. So each of these hits these metal pieces at a certain speed, and it creates music or different tone based on the length of these bobby pins. So imagine this is all technology. It's just low tech, using these tools to create music. It doesn't always have to be digital. And you could take something that is very analog and even cause or help it to be more high tech. So I'm going to show you a video really quick from Strawbees. This is a use of your coding and robotics kit. Strawbees themselves are very low tech, but using the robot, the QuirkBot that came with it, you can transition from low tech to high tech.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Robbie! And me. And you take two strawberries. Make a triangle. Huh? How do you see? No, what? I don't know. You do it. Left.
What?
So in this video, what you saw were students using Strawbees, very low tech piece of equipment that you got in your kit, just to build three-dimensional shapes. And you saw there was a challenge there of them wearing a blindfold. Low tech, absolutely low tech, easy to do. But in that same kit, you also received a QuirkBot that could be added to these, what they make in a very low tech setting, to bring it up to be a little bit more high tech. So it's a great, that kit, that coding and robotics kit, is another great way for you to kind of progress in the usage of technology. So number 4 in our list of 5 things, find out what technologies you have access to. You might be very surprised to find out what you can use that's already in your building, what's in your district. What do you have, what does your local extension office have, maybe, that you can have access to? So look for things, for example, does your school or organization have a 3D printer? Is there a local business that maybe has a piece of technology or equipment that you could borrow? Maybe they could become a partner with you and they could bring in some of that equipment and use it alongside your students. Could you go on a field trip to a local place? You know, you might go to a, let's say a car, a place where they're fixing automobiles, or they are doing body work, like a body shop. And what are the different types of technologies that they have to do that? So maybe you could learn about that there. Or could older students in your district or your organization get involved and bring down, you know, to your class or to the space that you're working at, some of the technologies that they're able to use? So, you know, this right here is basically a shop class, an old type of shop class. And it's amazing how, you know, for a long period of time, schools had these and then they kind of closed them down, and now they're beginning to open up again. So maybe there is a shop class or this type of technology room somewhere in your school or in your district or in the building that you're in that maybe you can have access to. Maybe you could take your students there and they know that this is something they want to cut or that they want to use a specific tool with. And, maybe you don't always have to have it in your classroom. It could be just something that you want to have access to. And this is probably one of my favorite things, having a dream. As technology changes, which is pretty much every day, there are new things that are out there, new components, new pieces, new add-ons, completely new ideas and concepts. So keep looking. What's out there? What are those new things that are being used in the workforce itself? And keep a list of those things. What are things that you might dream of having access to in your room or in your space? And keep finding out ways that you could get those. If you can't get a CNC router, you don't have the space for it, what are some other ways you could work around that? Could you get a HandyBot, a smaller version of a CNC router? Or, how could you look at having access to that in other ways? But look for additional funding. Leverage your Making STEM Connection award against finding or being able to buy more or purchase more or have access to. And keep asking, keep looking, and keep asking for those things that are new and upcoming and that you have a dream for. So don't be afraid to put that dream bank of 3D printers on your list. Put it there and keep working towards it if you believe that is something that's going to help your students advance their skills. Speaking of 3D printers, I get a lot of questions about, should we have one? How do we use it? And here's some thoughts I've kind of put together on that idea of a 3D printer. Chris Anderson, former editor-in-chief of Wired Magazine, said that 3D printing will be bigger than the web. And this may very well be an understatement. It is fascinating to me. I'm on on Facebook, I'm on a 3D printer group page. And so there's people from all over the world that contribute to that page of things that they are 3D printing. And it blows my mind. They're 3D printing food. They're 3D printing boats and houses out of concrete. The sky is the limit, really, in this venue. And so any opportunity you have to help students see this as a tool of creation is one that will really pay a lot of dividends. So here's some things to think about. Application of 3D printers. Using it in healthcare. There's lots of beautiful stories out there of people that have had prosthetic limbs and other, components that help them in their health, their physical health, that have been 3D printed. And so imagine you can custom make something for somebody, a brace, or something that will help them to live their life in a more healthier way that can be created and 3D printed. Fashion and design. It is amazing how much jewelry, components to different articles of clothing, whether it might be a button or a zipper or some kind of adornment that can be 3D printed. I've seen 3D printed shoes, replacement parts for different things that can be 3D printed. You see, there's just so many different things that it can be used for. And over here, we were talking about Tinkercad earlier. Andrew was talking about that with the Merge Cube. And Tinkercad is a wonderful program to use in conjunction with 3D printers for designing in a CAD type program. And something I want to show you, let me go to my next screen, is that Tinkercad has this new application called Code Blocks. And I'll show you how to get to this. But this coding platform right here for designing and creating something that you could 3D print should look kind of familiar. This is block-based coding. It looks very similar to Scratch. It looks similar to MakeCode. So if students are already familiar with that, they can create and design things that could be 3D printed or uploaded to your Merge Cube in this same kind of platform. It also allows us to understand 3D printing in a completely different way, or 3D modeling. Maybe that's a better way for me to explain that. Through this platform. So Code Blocks is what it's called, and it's part of Tinkercad. Tinkercad is free. Students can create their own files. You as an educator can create your own file and start designing. You don't have to use code blocks, but I think it's a wonderful transition if you're already teaching block-based coding through things like Scratch or MakeCode or Dash and Dot or Spheros or any of those other types of applications. It's an easy transition to now starting to design something in a 3D platform using those same tools. 3D printers in education can be used to create 3D models of things. Students can design or print out, or teachers can print out a 3D version of a heart. I've seen a professor at Drake that 3D printed enzymes so that students could see the three-dimensional structure, and then they could talk about the denaturization of a protein. And so what happens when that protein is exposed to heat and it changes its shape. So it's a tactile way for students to learn, and they can design it, or you can design it and print it out for them. It also allows you to create three-dimensional tools for students in their classroom to illustrate concepts that are hard to grasp. So these students are right here, there's a double helix, a DNA type structure that oftentimes is very hard for students to imagine. And we like to show them pictures of it in 2D, but what does it actually look like in those 3 dimensions? They can really create things that are of interest to them, something that they design, something that students make that serve a purpose, and they can understand how design can be translated into application and purpose using a 3D printer. And objects that are personal to them, something that they are interested in through a 3D printer. It can be used for prototyping, technology pieces, realistic. You see mini models here. Things that used to have to be casted and plaster can now be designed and printed in plastic. And students can be in the driver's seat through CAD programming. So not just designing it on a computer, but they can actually print it out and build it and find out how well it works. And we have, let me see, oh, we have just a little bit more time left. I want to show you part of this TED Talk here that I think will really inspire you. It's a little bit older. Thomas Suarez is actually a student in college now, but I want to show you a little bit of this YouTube video about his work in designing apps.
Hello everyone, my name is Thomas Suarez. I've always had a fascination for computers and technology, and I made a few apps for the iPhone, iPod Touch, and iPad. I'd like to share a couple with you today. My first app was a unique fortune teller called Earth Fortune that would display different colors of Earth depending on what your fortune was. And my favorite and most successful app is Bustin' Jeeber, which is a Justin Bieber whack-a-mole. I created it because a lot of people at school disliked Justin Bieber a little bit, so I decided to make the app. So I went to work programming it, and I released it just before the holidays in 2010. A lot of people ask me, how did I make these? A lot of times it's because the person who asked the question wants to make an app also. A lot of kids these days like to play games, but now they want to make them. And it's difficult because not many kids know where to go to find out how to make a program. I mean, for soccer, you could go to a soccer team. For violin, you could get lessons for a violin. But what if you want to make an app? And the kids' parents might have done some of these things when they were young, but not many parents have written apps. Where do you go to find out how to make an app? Well, this is how I approached it. This is what I did. First of all, I've been programming in multiple other programming languages to get the basics down, such as Python, C, Java, etc. And then Apple released the iPhone, and with it, the iPhone Software Development Kit. And the Software Development Kit is a suite of tools for creating and programming an iPhone app. This opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me. And after playing with the Software Development Kit a little bit, I made a couple apps. I made some test apps. One of them happened to be Earth Fortune, and I was ready to put Earth Fortune on the App Store, and so I persuaded my parents to pay the $99 fee to be able to put my apps on the App Store. They agreed, and now I have apps on the App Store. I've gotten a lot of interest and encouragement from my family, friends, teachers, and even people at the Apple Store, and that's been a huge help to me. I've got a lot of inspiration from Steve Jobs. And I started an app club at school, and a teacher at my school is kindly sponsoring my app club. Any student at my school can come and learn how to design an app. This is so I can share my experiences with others. There's these programs called the iPad Pilot Program, and some districts have them. I'm fortunate enough to be part of one. A big challenge is, how should the iPads be used, and what apps should we put on the iPads? So we're getting feedback from teachers at the school to see what kind of apps they'd like. When we design the app and we sell it, it will be free to local districts and other districts that we sell to. All the money from that will go into the local ed foundations. These days, students usually know a little bit more than teachers with the technology. So, sorry. So this is a resource to teachers, and educators should recognize this resource and make good use of it. I'd like to finish up by saying what I'd like to do in the future. First of all, I'd like to create more apps, more games. I'm working with a third-party company to make an app. I'd like to get into Android programming and development. And I'd like to continue my app club and find other ways for students to share knowledge with others. Thank you.
So I think that's so amazing that this young man is in 6th grade and was already thinking, first of all, how he can make something that would be useful to him, but also the entrepreneurial spirit of how it could be useful to other people. So again, you can look him up if you would like to. He is in college now, and he's got a really great story. Let me see if I can go back here. And Thomas Suarez is his name. Right there, if you want to look him up and see what he is doing these days. I always like to point out some helpful resources for you. Youth Makerspace Playbook. This is one I point out every single time. It's free, it's downloadable as a PDF file, and you will find some information about technology on pages 35 through 39. And then also in the book that you receive, the Event to Learn book, this is the 2nd edition, and it has an expanded repertoire of information on technology, more so than the 1st edition, so I'm really excited. Chapter 7 talks about game changers in terms of fabrication. So they talk about, for example, how does a 3D printer work? What is computer-aided design or CAD design? How to choose a 3D printer? Those can all be found in Chapter 7. Chapter 8 looks at physical computing, and it talks about makey-makeys and microcontrollers like the microbit that you received, Raspberry Pi, it being a real computer. I think the progression from something like makey-makey to a microbit to a Raspberry Pi, even with Arduinos in there, I think is a really incredible way for students to kind of grow in their application. And then talk about why physical computing, why is that so important in learning. So again, that purple book, that Invent to Learn book, is an excellent resource. It's almost like a textbook to give you lots of support and understanding. The Art of Tinkering, which you all received as well, has some really great ideas. This book is really more of a kind of a inspiration book. So it's got lots of pictures and descriptions of things that you could make and create. And And let's see, here's some pages about using technology in textiles. So you received in your kit some materials for doing sewable circuits. You've got LED lights that are special for sewing or to be sewed on, and you got conductive thread, this instrument, a day one, and the chain reaction machine. And so I think, let me see. Okay, I'm going to show you one video here really quick, but I just want to remind you our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, November 19th. That's our last one. And we're going to look at the challenges and outcomes of maker education. But I want to show you really quick this video. We'll end with this. It'll just take a couple of minutes. And it is a video about, I want you to think about all the technology that goes into this. It's about, it's from a group called OK Go. They are an incredible band that makes amazing videos using lots of science concepts. So I just want you to think about all the science that could be taught through something like this and all the technology that was involved. And I'm gonna go to, hold on just a second so I can get it to this right page. No. Okay, hold on. Get it to the. See, did that work? Okay. Maybe. Let me try one more. Let me try one more time here. Okay, here we go. So I love that video. I showed that video when I was teaching at DMAC to talk about potential energy and kinetic energy, but I just think it's a great showcase of creativity and all this kinds of technology that they used in order to create that. So again, thank you for the evening. As always, let me know if you have questions or needs. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks on November 19th. Okay, I'm going to stay on for a little while in the chat room if you have any questions. Thank you.